I call to order the May 13th, 2026 Planning Commission hearing at 9 a.m. We're meeting in the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors chambers as well as via Zoom. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, please proceed with roll call.
Commissioner Burrows?
Here.
Commissioner Gupta?
Here.
Commissioner Serrano Kwan? Vice Chair Nugent?
Here.
Chair Garcia?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum and staff is represented by Monowitz, Fox, Gonzalez, and Segura. Thank you.
We will now open public comment for items on the consent agenda and items not on the agenda. This meeting is limited to public forum. All public comments must relate to something that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the agency. If the comment doesn't relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of the agency, we will interrupt your comment and move on to the next speaker. As presiding officer of the meeting, I will determine whether a comment does or does not relate to the subject matters placed within the agency's purview. Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I will first call upon members in person, followed by speakers on Zoom. For in-person comments, the speaker slips are located in the back of the room. On Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if you are calling by phone. And at this time, we have nobody wishing to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now close public comment for the items on the consent agenda and items not on the agenda. Is there a motion to set the agenda and approve consent calendar, which includes item 1, the minutes from the last meeting, April 8th, 2026?
So moved. I will second that.
Okay.
Commissioner Burrows?
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta?
Abstain. I was absent.
Commissioner Serrano Kwan?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nugent?
Aye.
Chair Garcia?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 4 and 1 abstention.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2. Madam Clerk, please introduce the project and the planner.
Thank you. Applicant is San Mateo County Planning and Building Department, file number PLN 2025-00232, and your project planner is Camille Leon. Oh, 1 second.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So we're back here in front of you today. You saw the design review ordinance. You saw the design review ordinance on January 28th. And as I'll describe in the slides, you took action on it. But we're back here today with some changes. Okay, so the design review ordinance, the main goals of this update, you could call it, is to revise the current design review zoning district design standards to be objective and enforceable, to establish a ministerial design review process in areas outside the coastal zone, reducing project costs and time for planning approval, to address coastside design review committee feedback and public concerns about the current ordinance, and to impose design review standards on small projects not requiring other permits, such as, say, painting and lighting. It also includes a minor amendment to 3 other chapters other than the design review ordinance of the zoning regulations. And those are the S17, S94, and the S105, which are overlaid over the R1 and the design review districts in the Mid-Coast. And these text changes within those 3 ordinances are to be consistent with the update, such that both daylight plane and facade articulation compliance is required, not either or as it's currently written. So, okay, sorry, hitting the wrong button. Okay, sorry. All right, so just to remind you perhaps of the areas subject to design review in the unincorporated county, there are areas that we call the Bayside, which are outside of the coastal zone, and they include furthest north, planned Colma. There's no changes to standards relative to planned Colma. Southward, Devonshire, which is kind of in San Carlos. It's a pocket within the town of San Carlos, or city of rather. And then there's Palomar Park and Emerald Lake Hills. So the design standards update does affect Devonshire, Palomar Park, and Emerald Lake Hills. And in the urban midcoast, you can see there's various zoning districts in the urban midcoast that include Montero, Moss Beach, El Granada, and Miramar. There's other areas outside of the urban midcoast, which are San Gregorio and Pescadero, that have a design review overlay. So these standards would also be applicable to those areas. Okay, so on the left is what I reviewed with you on January 28th, just the overall structure of the changes to the ordinance. And today we're back for changes specifically to the bird safety standard. Well, we added a bird safety standard for glass and railings, also non-glass transparent surfaces like say plexiglass, in response to public comment from January 28th. And then also with an update to the lighting, exterior lighting color rating limits. We sort of maybe settled that argument a little bit better this time around. And also minor text changes for clarity and presentation to the overall ordinance they're all pretty minor since the last time you reviewed it. So just to remind you of the action taken, Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the ordinance. Also directing staff to address bird strike proofing measures for buildings based on public comment received during that hearing. And then also directed staff based on lively public comment regarding various levels of color rating to prepare a pros and cons analysis for the Board of Supervisors of the levels of 2,200, 2,700, and 3,000 as options in color rating limits. So staff included a table in the staff report and also in this presentation. But just as a result of this analysis, staff has maintained the original color rating of the original ordinance that you reviewed, with grandfathering for existing houses unless there are major remodels or additions. So just to remind you what the 2,200 versus 2,700 versus 3,000 colors would look like. The lower the rating, the warmer the color. And as it approaches 3,000, it gets more white. So 2,200, which is the level that staff is recommending, is more of like an orangey yellow. So as currently written, in the standard to the left, you had originally reviewed the not underlined text, and staff has added the underlined text, which is that the standard applies to all development with the following exception. For single family residential use development, the standard only applies to new construction and major repair, remodel, or upgrades as defined in section 8.38.020.9, which is the zoning nonconformities chapter of so this is remodel or upgrades of existing single family residences. And that was added in response to a concern that changing light fixtures for existing single family residences could be cost prohibitive, especially if it's an older structure owned by older property owners who don't really have the budget to or maybe even knowledge of the color rating standard and could purchase the wrong kind of lighting. So staff added, in response to the public comment on January 28th, bird strike proof treatment standard. It was added at the direction of the Planning Commission to work with the bird safety advocates. I've met with them twice now, and we've gone sort of back and forth on text changes so that, you know, everyone should be generally happy with the way it's written. The standard would apply to all glass railings at any height, as well as planned developments, which are like subdivisions or just multi-lot developments, residential developments, commercial use, multifamily use, industrial use, institutional construction projects, additions onto existing development, or where 50% or more exterior glass will be replaced. But exempting affordable multifamily housing, as well as portions of single family homes 30 feet or less in height. So the standard reads, okay, that bird-friendly treatment as defined in this section is a reference to the recommendation of bird safety treatment measures for all projects, which is in a recommendation, not in this standard, but it precedes this section of the ordinance. So the definition is in that other area, in the other section. So it's as defined in that section or other equivalent alternative design measure, subject to approval by the Director of Planning and Building, is required on 90% of windows and other transparent exterior surfaces for the following types of uses. And we use 90% based on feedback from the bird advocacy group. That 100% really isn't sometimes feasible, and that there's areas that could be excluded to achieve like a 90%, which is pretty equivalent to the whole. And also, I think a similar approach that other municipalities have taken relative to their requirements. So the bird treatment requirement would apply to all new planned developments. I think I've read this before, but single family, multifamily homes that exceed 30 feet in height, new commercial, institutional, and industrial projects, additions would have to comply, that replace 50% or more of the existing exterior glass. And additions and replacements. And then also that bird-friendly treatment is required on the entirety of the following new or replaced features. So there's certain features that are determined to be hazardous, more hazardous to birds. So those features would in any case be required to have treatment. And those are glass railings, areas with transparent corners, fly-through features, and all surfaces above a green roof. And then also exempting 100% affordable multifamily housing, first floor storefronts, and all operable sash windows. So we're on our path to the Board of Supervisors and then to the Coastal Commission for the coastal zone. And the ordinance, if approved on, or if recommended for approval here, and it will go to the June 9th Board of Supervisors hearing for adoption. But then for the Bayside, it would take effect 30 days after the adoption by the board. But for the Coastal Commission, it would go on to the Coastal Commission for certification and take effect immediately upon their certification. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt an ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 8.256 of the County Ordinance Code regarding design review standards and with modifications recommended by staff, and adopt related text amendments to the county zoning regulations for various zoning districts for consistency within the ordinance. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for any comment as well as staff and council.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. You had mentioned something about facade articulation change. Can you explain what that is? The change, and maybe just
Sure.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, so our current design review standard, in those 3 zoning districts allowed an option of compliance with either facade articulation, which means some type of detail, a window, a balcony, breaking up like a long wall surface so that it doesn't appear blank, or compliance with the daylight plane, which is, that sort of 3D building envelope that you could place on a property that would define when the second story would have to cut in from the setback up to the building height, the max building height. So you didn't have to comply with both. You have to comply with one or the other. But under our current design standards update, the CDRC recommended compliance with both. And so far in my meetings with various professionals, they don't, design professionals and development professionals, they don't see a problem with requiring compliance with both. So that it was kind of duplicative. It was like the option was both in the design review ordinance and also kind of scattered in these 3 different zoning districts. So we had to clean those up as well.
Okay, so just to be clear, the only change since the last review is that it's now required for both, or is now.
That isn't a change, actually.
Oh, okay.
That was brought to you previously. The only changes are the bird safety and the exterior lighting, and plus some just minor text edits just for formatting and clarity. Just,
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
overall.
Okay, thank you.
The frequency of these incidents happening and what communities are being affected.
In terms of lighting, I have to say there's a lot of complaints on the coast side relative to various small and large projects, both single family homes and institutional type uses. It's because lighting has like that cool blue lighting has an effect on dark sky, being able to see the stars, and just overall not being as comforting to the eye as a warmer tone. So while design standards currently limit lighting to like task lighting, and it's just sort of some general language about minimizing impacts, lighting impacts, our standard now, what we're recommending is very objective. So further strengthens our existing lighting standards, especially adding the color rating to address a lot of those community concerns. And then with regard to bird safety and glass, there's bird strikes that happen, without recording regularly, I'm sure. I'm sure the bird safety advocates that they could be on this call might have some better statistics, but even in my 2nd story condo, I hear bird strikes quite frequently.
Actually, to clarify, you kind of alluded to it when you were answering, but the complaints you received are predominantly that the lighting standard is too permissive rather than too restrictive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the current lighting standard is too permissive.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think it's important that we be clear about the new lighting standard being recommended. I think previously, before when it came to you, we had a range of potentially allowable color ratings between 2,200 and 3,000. And so we've arrived at the 2,200 requirement for all new development. However, there's an exception for minor addition and remodels to single family residences. And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about how that exception will be interpreted. So if someone's doing a minor remodel, so a small addition to a home, then they would not be required to change the fixtures on the exterior of that structure, including that minor new portion of the building. Is that correct interpretation, Camille?
As it reads, yeah.
As it currently reads. Yeah. And so then the second question is, how does it apply to non-single family residential structures? So a commercial structure, industrial structure, a duplex or other multifamily residential structure. And I think because the way it's currently written, the exception only applies to a single family residence, that a minor addition to something other than a single family residence, like a multi-family structure, commercial, industrial, that addition, even if it's minor, would need to comply with this new lighting fixture. However, the remainder of the structure could remain the same. So only the new portion of the structure would need to comply. And I just, Camille, I see you nodding your head. That's
All non-residential uses would be required to comply.
You were talking about the lighting, and this is the
yes.
this is I think.
Oh yeah, you got the bird friendly.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that the exception is specifically to single family residences, but other structures, even minor additions, would need to comply with this new lighting standard. But if it was minor, only the new portion would need to comply. In all instances, a major addition or remodel, be it a single family residence or other structure, that major remodel, the entirety of the structure would need to comply with the new lighting standard.
And also to clarify, the definition of minor and major is.
Camille, you want to?
It's defined in 8.388, but it has to do with the 50%. So whether it hits the 50% valuation of the existing structure. So if the project does, in terms of either additions or remodels, then it would be considered a major remodel or upgrade.
Thanks, Camille. I just wanted everyone to be on the same page about that, because I think there could be questions in the future, and I wanted the record to reflect the way in which we're interpreting this exception.
So going back, continuing with that discussion. So did we say we have 2,200 is the standard?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, based on the input we've received since the last hearing on this matter, I think the consensus or the majority opinion has been that we should go with the 2,200 color rating, because it is more friendly to dark sky compliance.
Okay. And is safety, because we are talking about exterior lighting, so is safety taken into consideration in this 2,200?
This is a color warmth rating,
Okay.
not a like a wattage
Not a wattage.
level or
Okay.
like brightness level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I looked at, like, the perimeter can only have these motion sensitive lighting and things like that.
Yes.
So these days, I think safety is very important.
This is true. Yes. And there's also building code regulations regarding lighting
I
on
know,
trees and
I
such.
know.
That would
To me-
that would still be in effect.
Right, right. Because to me, it seems very complicated, and implementation and enforcement has to be done on these things once it's put on paper or in part of the regulations. So when the design process is right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there would be lesser enforcement.
Well, thank you for that comment, Commissioner Gupta. I think, ensuring that this requirement applies when there's a new addition project, as opposed to somebody's just changing fixtures or repainting. The change that we've made to be clear that, compliance with this requirement is triggered by new development, as opposed to just someone changing fixtures or repainting, will enhance our ability to ensure compliance, because if you are going to repaint your home, you typically don't need to pull a permit. And so it would be difficult for us to enforce a requirement regarding lighting if somebody was repainting their home. So I think the clarification we're bringing to you today helps in that regard.
Okay. Okay. And maybe this is, I'm going too far out, but is this something that would be part of kind of online permitting process? This would be implemented into that?
So
Is
the
what the
online
right
permitting
question?
system is how applications get into the door, so that we can initiate processing. The application of these requirements is done by the planner reviewing those applications. So,
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
so the online permitting system is the way in which applications are submitted to the department. The application of these standards are done by the planners reviewing the application submitted through the system. So it will necessitate that the planners reviewing the application ensure that it complies with these requirements. So it's not an automated function on our online system. It requires a planner to confirm.
And we don't expect AI to take over at
Not
some
yet.
point?
Not yet.
Not
Maybe sometime in the future. And I'll be happy to update you on our AI initiative during the director's report.
Okay, thank you.
Question was in the going off in the future. I think this is great to do this, but it seems to me there's going to be like a disparity of you're going to have a 2,200 house and then 5,000 house and all over. Is there a chance in the future where we can move more toward the overall dark sky 2,200 rating? How can we do that? So that's my best case scenario, I guess, going on. Because right now, I mean, I think it will, like I said, getting this is much better than not doing it, but there's going to be a lot of mix and match kind of thing.
No, that's true, and I think that's not necessarily uncommon in the work that we do, where we have older homes that are, as we say, grandfathered. They were built at a time when the rules were different, and at the point at which they undergo a major addition or remodel, which happens with older homes when they change hands, then that's when they will be required to comply. I think, making this clear about what triggers compliance is important in terms of not placing a burden on some older homeowners who are really not doing anything to their existing home that was, compliant at the time it was permitted.
And I think, as has been mentioned, there's such a sentiment to go to the 2,200 on the coast side from what I've seen that hopefully it seems like people are moving in that direction regardless.
Agreed. And we will continue to encourage people to do that. So, even with a minor remodel, although they're not required, when we have an opportunity to encourage an applicant to do that, we will do so.
That's everything from the commission. We can open public comment for this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We do have somebody wishing to speak in chambers. So I will call on Steve Terry. You will have 5 minutes.
A lot of time. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Steve Terry. I live in El Granada next to Half Moon Bay on the coast side. I want to start out by saying that, I mentioned this before, I think when we spoke last time, but I want to reiterate it, is that I served in the late 90s on Supervisor Gordon's task force that it was called at the time. And this was in the wake of an urgency interim ordinance that the county put together to try to try to address all the appeals that were going on at the county level because of the so-called McMansions, which were the rage back then. And there are essentially no regulations, so houses were really huge, and the builders were just trying to maximize square footage. So that's what this was all about. And this group under Supervisor Gordon worked to put in place the current design review standards that we have today on the coast side. And of course, these largely address floor area ratio, lot coverage, and daylight planes, sorts of things we've been talking about today. But keep in mind that this is all negotiated. All these things that we came up with are negotiated. There are like 6 of us sitting across the table from 6 builders that were trying to make the numbers as big as possible, and we were trying to make them as small as possible. We ended up in a place in the middle where everyone could sort of agree on it. And a part of that process, we also created the Coastside Design Review Committee. But also we added some performance standards regarding lighting and noise. And the lighting, largely, I feel like this, reading through this thing, I feel like the standards that are being brought to the rest of the unincorporated county are largely what we put together 20 some years ago. And so I'm very supportive of doing all that. But today I just want to mainly talk about lighting. And I'm very interested in dark skies, and I appreciate that. And I very much appreciate staff's changes to incorporate the 2200K color temperature. And I think that's a really good step in the right direction. So I want to support this ordinance generally. My concern is about mitigating the existing lighting, as the discussion you just had a moment ago. That's really my concern. And how do you do that? I think if I recall, I'm not certain, but if I recall, the plan was to try to address that in 1 year, and that was kind of aggressive. I thought back then that was too aggressive. So what I would like to see, the commission, if possible, the commissioners, if possible, to encourage staff to work with the community, maybe through the Mid-Coast Community Council and other things, to come up with a long-term plan to address the existing lighting in R1. Because I think there's so many things that can be done without imposing ordinances and things like that and upsetting people. I think you can have like a win-win situation where there's many strategies that can be applied. And I think if the community got together, we could do something. Maybe money could be raised to try to swap stuff out. I remember when people were trying to get water connections a long time ago, because water connections are hard to get on the coast. There was a plan to, if you swap toilets out for low flush toilets, enough of those, you would get a water permit. So something along those lines, I think, could be done. And there's a lot of strategies I think that be put in play, so we could have like a 5-year plan to mitigate these lighting, so you don't have the differences between neighbors, where one's at 2200K and the other's at 5000K or something like that. So I would like to see that encouraged as a kind of a win-win plan for the whole entire community. I also want to note that on the same subject, as I noted, we already have existing standards that prohibit all kinds of light egress, but a lot of the lighting that has gone in, unfortunately, over the last 27 years has been non-compliant with the existing standards. So you will find that there's a lot of stuff that could be sent to enforcement for already. It could be sent to enforcement for say, hey, you got to change that out. And a lot of that might be tough to prove that it was not put in the last 25 years. It was put in before that. But I think you could probably go to Google Maps and see, oh, look, there's what that house looked like in 2005. There's a picture of it, and I can see those lights weren't there. So you could probably go along some route like that if you wanted to. So yeah, we do have a compliance issue today, but and so I think we want to try to find a community-based solution to address that. I do have two quick questions, like one for staff. I'm not clear on how non-R1 lighting is existing lighting is mitigated. If that could be addressed, and to the commissioner talked about safety. I think there's growing evidence that says brighter, bluer light does not make for safer environments necessarily. But I'm not an expert in that, so I don't want to. But that's something to think about or look into. Thank you very much for letting me have my comments.
Thank you. We will now move on to Zoom speakers. We do have 5 virtual hands raised. I will first call on Dan Haggerty, followed by Sid Young. Dan, go ahead. Please accept the request to unmute your mic.
Yes, hi,
Go
can you
ahead.
hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Planning Department, for, taking these steps, appreciate it. I just wanted to kind of go over some broad concepts. Number one, science agrees that the light emissions is hazardous to humans and wildlife. I also want to remind that the International Dark Sky Association board policy is to have most lights at 2200K. Very, very strict minor exceptions. And that was written in, I believe it was 2021. And it's true that the overall effect of reducing blue light would be best with 2200K. It's very confusing for me. And it appears that since the existing single family homes are like 99% or currently 100% of the existing light emissions, I think that it is fair to expect that there should be some significant reduction in blue light. So by doing this exception with all of the single family homes, you're missing an opportunity to actually reduce blue light emissions. Most of the serious kind of violating or blue light emissions now on single family homes, I understand based on some of these other regulations that they're going to have to change your light fixture anyway. So therefore, why not have them change the light fixture to 2200K? And again, it's so confusing. I'm not reading any limit at all so somebody could change a light to 7000K and that seems to be okay. I may be wrong, but I'm not seeing anything that really has a limit to the single family homes now. I understand there's concern about inflicting costs, and we want to be not have any drastic other cities have done long compliance. You start out with strong encouragement to act immediately, but through variances and requests or whatever, there could be up to 8-year compliance. And the main thing is it's not some of these houses, they have architectural lighting, and sure, that gets complicated, but fundamentally your average house has a door light. It's just one light, very easy to change, very low cost. And the impacts of reducing blue light would be very significant. And then there's the festoon lighting concept, which festoon lighting is very, very popular, and I will say that I really have no problem with it as long as it's 2200K and not exceptionally excessive. But I'm reading this as somebody can put 5000K festoon lighting, and there's no control over this. The festoon lighting 2200K is so soft and so soothing, and Yes, in the concept of soothing, please remember how how relaxing and how pleasant it is to be around a campfire, or burning a candle. This is the color that is soothing to human beings, and not offensive to wildlife. So that's the 2200K, similar to a campfire, a sunset, uh, a soft candle. Um, anyway, I'm really hoping, as it stands now, it seems to be confusing to me as to what kind of effect are we really going to have here. And the long-term goal of actually, creating a healthier environment for humans that live here. And I'd like to see some real steps that are kind of moving and going to make change over
Thank,
time.
thank you for your comment. Yeah, you're out of time at this point.
Thank you. I will now call on Sid Young, followed by Shawnee Kleinhaus.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I live on the coast side as well. I apologize because I tuned in a little bit late, and I overheard some of the directors asking if this was safe, and I guess they meant safe for humans to get to their front door, or if it's not bright enough to walk around your house at night. But I think what the coast side objection are to brighter light is just that it's not safe for wildlife, or it's harmful to wildlife. So just hope that's what the question was about. And also, as far as one of the last speakers, Dan Haggerty, was speaking about, I think maybe he was talking about um, going after people that already have existing lighting. I don't know, as a consumer, when you go out to change a light bulb, whether you can go into a hardware store and say, hey, my spotlight over my driveway that I use for safety, I need to make it bird friendly now. And if the hardware store is going to know what light bulb to sell me. So, as a normal consumer, or if you have to completely change out the fixture. Because as it is now, I have a dawn to dusk light bulb over my garage because it's very dark on the coastside. We don't have very many street lights. So I like to walk into my yard and my driveway with nobody hiding, to jump out at me since I live alone. So anyway, um, I didn't understand one of the comments that was made by Camille, which was, now this is like bird friendly, but it doesn't say it comply. I don't know if she meant that it complies with dark skies or not, but I think she was saying it's close to being dark sky compliant. So I'd like that to be just verified. If on the mid coast, are we going to just go straight to using the dark sky compliant lighting? Because I attend a lot of the MCC meetings, and that seems to be the main concern out there. And a lot of the commercial buildings are the ones that flagrantly disregard that. I know they had issues with the El Granada fire station, and also with the El Granada school, I mean, sorry, the Montera Elementary School, putting up really bright lights, and it's just obnoxiously flooding over the property line into neighbors' windows and stuff, not to mention the worry for wildlife. So, if you could just confirm that that is the case, that the this initiative for the Mid Coast will be completely dark sky compliant. And the last thing I wanted to say is I missed public comment, but attended the last Coastside Design Review meeting, and I never could find the video online. And then I found out they're not videotaping their meetings. And I don't like the lack of transparency for that. And I'm hoping that they will take measures to start having a videographer, because the excuse they gave was that room or the coast side doesn't have good connectivity.
This-
But the room that's being used now is at the building where
this
the
this
harbor.
particular subject
What?
isn't really, we have no
Okay, I'm
control over the.
sorry. I missed public comment because I was having trouble logging in.
Thank you,
I'll
Sid. We will now call on Shawnee Kleinhaus, followed by Dash Leads.
Good morning. My name is Shani Kleinhaus. I'm the environmental advocate for the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance, and I have been working on the issue of bird collisions with man-made structures for over 30 years. Last weekend, we celebrated the annual World Migratory Bird Day, which takes place in May at the height of spring migration. Over the past couple of weeks, millions of birds have flown over the Bay Area each night on their way to breeding grounds further north. At the same time, many of our resident birds are fledging young, so spring and fall, the migration periods, are particularly dangerous to birds. And this is why this ordinance is so important. Both the light and the collision hazards impact their ability to continue existing in our environment. Bird species vary widely in their visual systems and behavior. Just like mammals or fish, we're not all the same. And for that reason, we should be cautious about assuming that UV patterned light, a glass, would be consistently visible or effective across species and environmental conditions. And therefore, we request that the UV glass be removed from the proposed ordinance. Otherwise, we believe the ordinance was well crafted and scientifically grounded. At the same time, broad community support is important, and we appreciate the opportunity to work collaboratively with other advocates. And so we support the alternative proposed in Mr. Levin's letter. Glass is an expensive building material. It has poor thermal performance, poorer than walls, and is hazardous to birds. So reducing excessive glass can lower construction and operation costs, while also benefiting the ecology, climate resilience, and overall building performance. It is not surprising that building standards are increasingly moving towards bird-safe design standards and guidelines. Recent guidance from the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, as well as evolving Calgary recommendations, support bird-safe design and generally encourage limiting excessive window-to-wall ratio. And since I have a little more time, I'd like to say something about lighting as well. I am pleased to see that for areas visible from and within 50 feet from scenic corridors, the proposed ordinance suggests to limit the number of exterior light fixtures to the minimum required by the building code. It would be nice to apply this more broadly. We see proliferation of lighting on buildings where you used to have one fixture. Now with LED, it's so much cheaper that people would put a lot more lighting fixtures. And so that contributes a lot to the light pollution that we see in neighborhoods. So if possible, apply these standards near bodies of water and open space, or even universally. Finally, I want to thank Camille and staff for the sincere interest, diligence, and thoughtful work on this issue, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now call on Dash Leads, followed by Lexi Mendoza. Dash, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Conservation Coordinator for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter, speaking here today in support of the inclusion of both the bird-friendly design and dark sky language in the standards. Previous research has estimated that between 365 million to 988 million birds die annually from collisions with buildings in the United States. There's a 2024 study that found that only 40% of birds with injuries from these collisions survive, even if they're able to fly away from that building. The study found that even under the best care conditions provided by wildlife rehabilitators, that 60% of collision victims still die. So the study found that the previous upper bound of 988 million birds is actually a vast underestimation of bird mortality, pushing mortality in the United States annually from building collisions well over 1 billion birds. This has a devastating impact on ecosystems over time. Regarding light pollution, scientific studies have clearly demonstrated that blue light, aka the higher Kelvin color temperature lighting, causes significantly more health impacts to humans and more disturbance to wildlife and the environment than the lower color temperatures. We therefore recommend that the color temperature limit should be limited as low as possible. We think that the draft language does an excellent job at this. The intensity of lighting and the number of fixtures should also be limited to the minimum necessary to support the designated activity, such as, for areas, as Shani mentioned, from and within 50 feet of scenic corridors, limiting the number of exterior fixtures to the minimum required by the building code. So your proposed standards do all of this, and we wholeheartedly support them. Because due to the low cost of LED lighting, overlighting has actually become a major issue throughout the Bay Area. A little bit more about the science here. Each one of us has retinal ganglion cells in our eyes, and when blue light hits those cells, our circadian rhythms are disrupted. It basically triggers all the physiological processes in our bodies that tell us it's daytime, which can lead to a variety of negative health impacts in wildlife and behavioral impacts and health impacts in humans too. As an example, a 2018 study in Spain evaluated the impacts of outdoor artificial light at night on more than 4,000 people across 5 years and concluded that, quote, both prostate and breast cancer were associated with high estimated exposure to outdoor light at night in the blue enriched light spectrum, end quote. Dark Sky International's State of the Science report, which analyzes hundreds of scientific studies related to light pollution, found that artificial light at night exposure, quote, seems to have effects on the entire life cycle, from childhood and adolescence to old age. In particular, these effects seem to result from the short wavelength blue light, end quote. It also states the following regarding blue light with regards to safety. Quote, glare from bright artificial light sources is a particular concern for nighttime safety. It results from intense light rays entering the eye directly from a source. Some of that light scatters inside the observer's eye, reducing the contrast between foreground and background. This effect makes it difficult to see objects as distinct from what surrounds them. Glare reduces the visibility of objects at night for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So blue light, this sort of harsh blue, high Kelvin light, actually makes nighttime lighting more unsafe as opposed to the lower color temperature lighting. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the 2200 Kelvin color temperature standard as it applies to single-family residential development. Currently, as proposed, the standard would only apply regarding single-family construction to new construction and major remodels and upgrades. Based on other dark sky ordinances in our region, Palo Alto, Cupertino, I recommend that you consider adding this standard to apply to new and replacement lighting. I think this would be really, really important to make sure that people, when people have that opportunity to replace their lighting and they're doing replacement fixtures, that's the perfect time to install this updated lighting systems. I Googled, today, what's in stock at Home Depot in San Mateo, and I found about 90 results for 2200 Kelvin lighting. So, people can walk into their hardware store and ask for 2200 Kelvin lighting, and, they'll have dozens of options available to them. So I do believe that this is feasible. You can also consider extending that 2200 Kelvin standard to the Emerald Lake / Oak Knoll area, Palomar Park, and the Devonshire areas as well, because currently that standard is not applicable in those locations. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I will now call on Lexi Mendoza, followed by Mark Din. Lexi, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Lex Mendoza. I'm the environmental associate, and I'm here on behalf of Green Foothills. A a representative with Housing Leadership Council sent in some request changes for the bird-friendly design standards, and we wanted to voice our support for those changes, in addition to the minor change of removing UV reflected coated glass in these design standards. This minor request was mentioned in the comment letter that we submitted with San Mateo County and Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliances, largely because UV coated glasses is not considered a reliable treatment for stopping bird collisions. Birds are generally unable to detect UV reflections on glass during cloudy or foggy conditions, or during the early morning and evening hours when bird activity is often highest. And to the changes requested by the Housing Leadership Council, they asked for the addition of a 40% facade threshold. And this standard for multifamily housing would minimize both impacts to birds and without increasing costs or burdens when constructing multifamily housing. This would only apply to housing that have windows and glass covering 40% or more of the facade. And even then, the requirement would only apply to the percentage of glass that exceeds the 40% threshold, meaning if there's like a 50% facade, only 10% would needed to be treated. I do want to say that while our submitted comment letter did support the design standards recommended by staff, we do want to acknowledge and understand and respect the financial concerns that our housing advocates have expressed. And we also appreciate their willingness to work with us to create a solution that protects both birds and multifamily housing. Therefore, we do urge the commissioners to implement these recommended changes in the bird-friendly design standards. Thank you for listening to my comment and consideration on the issue.
Thank you. I will now call on the last two speakers we have on Zoom, Mark Din, followed by Jeremy Levine.
Hi there, commissioners. Good morning. Mark Din, Moss Beach resident and a community representative on the Coastside Design Review Committee. First off, I want to thank planning staff and commissioners for their work or working through the changes on the design review standards. In particular, the changes made on facade articulation, demonstration of scale, and lighting really address major sources of frustrations for neighbors and also the committee working through these issues. I feel this really strikes appropriate balance between neighborhood concerns with impact to construction costs. I do want to make a recommendation or urge the commission to consider removing that exception, similar to what Dan Haggerty had pointed out and others, Steve Terry included. Having an exception just really makes things confusing for enforcement and also for the community to understand. And I do think this removing the exception really simplifies the application of this standard. One thing I also want to point out too is I know that there's been some successful changes to lighting for places like the Fairlands School in Montera. One recent change in lighting on the coast that has really bothered neighbors has been the Seton Medical Center. If you happen to drive by the coast and see that lighting, that's definitely not a 2200 Kelvin light and has been quite a source of frustration for the residents close to the area. In particular, it's not only the change in lighting, but also some of the removal of trees, and that's become quite a, I would say, eyesore, not only for the community, but also I would imagine would impact wildlife around the area. Again, thank you for your time, and I would, again, ask that the commissioners consider recommending that the exception be removed to the lighting standard. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on our last speaker, Jeremy Levine.
Good morning, commissioners, staff. Thank you for a really thoughtful presentation and questions so far. Jeremy Levine here, speaking as the policy manager of the Housing Leadership Council. I want to focus primarily on the bird safe glass design standards that have been discussed previously. We have been in discussion with Green Foothills and other environmental partners. It's been a really good collaboration. We've really appreciated talking with them to find a solution that balances I think, really important environmental needs of protecting birds, especially on the coast and in migratory pathways, while also balancing the needs to keep housing costs in check and avoid simply imposing rules that could be increase construction costs significantly. So, as I wrote in a comment yesterday afternoon, the proposal, also mentioned by my colleague at Greenbelt, is at Green Foothills, pardon me, is to exempt buildings that have less than 40% of their facade covered in glass from the bird safe design standards. This will mean that most multifamily housing, most mid-rises, will not be subject to the rule unless they are using glass sheet, which is pretty uncommon until you get to high rises, at which point this is a smaller share of the construction costs anyway. And will I think mean that we're really balancing the need of housing and birds. The one thing I'll say, which was not in my comment, is right now this ordinance is written exempt single family homes below 30 feet, and by my understanding, a lot of bird deaths occur from single family homes that have large amounts of glass facade in coastal areas and bird migratory pathways. And I don't understand why there's a double standard between single and multifamily housing. I think that if the goal is protecting birds, we should be treating all housing equally. And so this same standard where homes with more than 40% glass facade have to use bird safe glass, I think would make sense for all kinds of housing, not just multifamily housing. We take our environmental responsibility seriously. So anyway, I would hope that at the very least we can focus on containing costs, but more broadly, should try to apply standards equally across housing types rather than picking favorites. So really appreciate the commission's work and staff's work, and are grateful for our partners in Greenfoot Hills and other environmental organizations. So thank you for your time. Looking forward to the rest of your discussion.
Thank you. And we have no further comments on Zoom, but for the record, just to reflect that we did receive written correspondence on this item that was circulated to the commission and posted to the website. Thank you.
Thanks. We will now close public comment for this item and begin commission discussion. Any comments?
If it would be helpful to the commission, I'd be happy to respond to some of the comments we received. So I think one of the main issues has to do with existing homes simply replacing their lights. And the reason that we've crafted the exception in the manner that we have is that simply replacing a light fixture typically does not trigger the need for a permit from our department. And so what we're trying to do with this ordinance is to ensure that when projects come in that require a permit from our department, that we apply the light standards identified to that project. To do otherwise would essentially necessitate that, for lack of a better term, we become the light police, and we have to respond to complaints about, hey, my neighbor changed a light fixture. Want you to come out and inspect and make sure that that light fixture complies. We you know, for existing homes that want to replace a light bulb or simply, you know, replace a light fixture, that's not going to trigger a permit from us, not going to trigger a review or a compliance inspection. So to, you know, take on the role of enforcing lights on every minor light change on the coast side, I think would be untenable for the department.
In response to that,
yes,
would it be possible to phrase it in such a way that if a plan, if a permit is pulled for some work at all, and the scope of that work includes a change to the lighting, that the light that is installed is conformance to this plan.
Oh, and that is the intention of what we've written.
Is there it seems like the exception here would be in minor revision projects that may include changes to lighting.
I see. So minor addition or remodel to a single family home, if that minor addition or remodel included a change to the light fixture, that new light fixture would need to comply. I think that such a clarification would be acceptable to staff.
Yeah.
So I'll just quickly respond to some of the other comments that were made. I think that there was a reference to the Seton Medical Facility and the lights that have been installed there. That was done without proper permit review. We have informed Seton COSIDE of the need to obtain an after-the-fact permit for those new lights that were installed. They have been working with the department. They have an application in process. That application will be brought before the Planning Commission, and it's our intent to ensure that the new light fixtures installed by Seton comply with these new light standard requirements. So more to come on that. And then finally, getting back to the issue of concerns about swapping out existing light fixtures on projects that don't trigger permits from our department. I think we do want to provide incentives and encouragement to all homes to use this 2200 color rating for all their new lights. So I agree with the speaker in chambers this morning that we should encourage and provide incentives for people to do that. I just don't feel that the department has sufficient authority to require it when someone's just simply changing a fixture. And I'll stop there and be happy to expand on that if the commissioners have questions.
Yeah, I think in reference to your comments and Mr. Terry's comments, I think awareness and education. I think most people want to do the right thing. Take my own lame example that I never would have thought, I'm going to replace a light bulb. You can just go out and buy a light bulb or get use the one I bought from the dollar store. So now that I know this, and I think most people on the coast side, I think our job is to, in any way the county can help, educate, make people aware. People want to do that. I think we're going to make a lot more progress that way sometimes in putting in certain requirements. I agree with these, but I really think that it's important that we make this a project on the coast side, because that's the way I think that's the way it's going to be most effective.
Yes, thank you for that comment. I agree. I've learned a lot from this myself and will be more selective in the sorts of lights I choose moving forward. And finally, I wanted to respond to the comment regarding the use of UV glass as a means of bird safety. I respect the speakers who know more about this subject than I do. And if the folks who are knowledgeable on this topic believe that UV coated glass does not provide an effective means of protecting birds, I have no problem with revising the language in the ordinance to make it clear that UV coating is not an effective means of achieving bird safety.
Any other commission comments?
Sure. Through the chair, I just want to touch on the collaboration between the Housing Leadership Council and the environmental groups, like Greenfoot Hills, on the multifamily provision that they are requesting to include First off, I want to say thank you for the collaboration between these groups. It's really helpful, I find, that they can figure it out and get good language for us to look at and have in front of us. The one question, and this might be more of a question for planning staff. So the representative Jeremy Levine from HLC had mentioned potentially having in his comment today, potentially having single family housing where the building facade consists of more than 40% glass also included, perhaps even regardless of height. I'm curious what the staff thinks of that and commissioners, in part because it's often the case that large amounts of glass, even on single family homes, which are often nestled within, especially in the county, nestled within landscapes that contain a lot of native plants. There's a lot of smaller birds that are kind of flying around between the plants, where even a relatively low height new building that is high amount of glass actually poses a danger. And I'm curious if there's some way that we could include basically any building that's over 40% glass at any height, include the bird safe, because it's really the breaking up of the glass with just like opaque walls that's the signal that, hey, this isn't just space. Whereas when you have a mostly glass surface, even fairly low, like smaller birds that are going between shrubbery and plants can pose a danger. And I'm curious if that's a feasible thing to modify based on some of the comments.
I can try to answer that one. Staff had given that some thought, and there's some, I guess, just some conceptual conflicts with design review in terms of incentivizing more hard surfaces, that's maybe even reducing articulation through a disincentive for windows. So that's one. And then two, it's sort of a calculation task that staff has to do on top of everything else to calculate the amount of window surface being used. And three, single family homes are likely to be lower stature. Also, there's ocean views that and you have views even in Emerald Hills where you'd want those windows, on maybe the view side. So those are some conflicts that staff sees with that. But that multifamily housing projects are higher in stature, generally have a higher budget, and maybe even it is even those buildings where there's more multifamily buildings than there would be like industrial or institutional, those other commercial. So by kind of taking that out, you're maybe reducing the overall application of the standard and also reducing articulation of those larger buildings.
Sorry, taking what out specifically?
You were taking out the exception for height taking out sorry, I lost my train of thought. So if you're taking out multifamily buildings and you're applying only a 40% or more surface exception, then you're taking out all the multifamily buildings that have less than 40% where that application would apply, where that standard would apply, if that makes sense.
If I may, I think you're suggesting not taking out anything, but removing the exception for.
I think what Committee for what Greenfoot Hills is suggesting is only applying that to the subset of multifamily housing that exceeds a window surface area of 40% or more. So you're giving them a bit of an exception if they're 40% or less.
Yes, and it's pretty typical for the building calculations to have to for the architect to have to determine the area of glazing for in an application. So I think the figuring out 40% of the coverage is already being done which I
Has
think,
to be confirmed.
yeah. Okay. I mean, just from my experience that they have to already calculate what the glazing percentage is on the wall surface for insulation calculations. So I guess my question is I'm good with this proposed solution for multifamily housing, where the building facade consists more than 40% glass. My question is, should that extend to everything that has 40% glass? And you're saying it might be challenging for single family homes.
I mean, that's why I was saying it doesn't sound like you're granting an exception for multifamily housing. It sounds like you're removing the exception for non-multifamily housing.
I'd
Yeah.
say it's both.
Yeah, I would say just any housing, single family and multifamily housing, where the building facade consists more than 40% glass.
Or there isn't an exception right now for multifamily housing.
Right. Right. This is just a proposed, proposed amendment.
Yeah, I think the argument from the housing is that we want to keep the affordability of housing lower versus commercial, industrial, or institutional use.
Right. 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 And that's why I'm supporting that change. I guess the question that was just brought up, and it's not in the letter that was received, whether it should be both single family and multifamily housing that's over 40% glass.
Do you know approximately how many units would be affected annually? Or development projects?
No, maybe see my note, but just regarding your last comment, remember the exception for single family homes that are 30 feet or below, that would apply to most single family homes. So by taking that out and applying the 40%, now you're kind of removing the exception for single family.
That was my question. Is like the 30 feet or below, like that's still
percentage are those? Are single family homes primarily?
I would say almost all of them are going to be under 30 feet. Yeah,
yeah,
almost all of them.
But 40% is also a significant fraction of a facade. So
Right.
how many applications would already hit this?
I think if you looked at the building as a whole, or whether there's for over 40% on any one side, I think it would be interesting to make that clarification. But you're going to have windows on the view side, and that's where the birds are going to be most likely.
Yeah. You are, yes. I will say again, 40% is a significant fraction of a facade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even on the view side, like, do you have an idea of just what fraction of single family homes at 40% on a facade?
On the views, I mean, homes that have views, that would probably be the case.
Yeah, but the way I read this is it's 40% of the entire building envelope, which, to your point, is probably really uncommon.
Yeah.
Except for like
a glass house.
A glass house,
yeah.
Which, sometimes is created, but I don't know.
And we only build 40 homes a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, it's more just like, are we worried about the glass house being a major hazard to birds?
I mean, I would think so, but I don't know how many glass houses there are.
Yeah.
What percentage of those 40 homes, 40 constructions could be those glass houses?
Well, our design review districts are mostly in areas with views, like mountainous, coastal communities. That's our design review districts. So.
Well, and on the point of the 40 units per year, you're right, Commissioner Gupta, but that's specific to new residential units. So we can have additions and remodels that go beyond the 40. So it certainly could be more than 40 per year. And just to make sure that I'm tracking the conversation clearly, I think the interest from the commission is entertaining the idea of removing the exception to the requirement to install bird-safe glass for single-family residences under 30 feet in height, in instances where one side of the home has glass that is 40% more of that facade. Am I
We have
tracking
been
that
talking
correctly?
about both single facade as well as an entire building envelope.
Okay.
I think the entire building envelope is sounds like a more reasonable standard.
I don't think a lot of buildings would cross that threshold.
Yeah.
But we are going to get projects like residential projects with nice views that have at one side
that has 40%.
like
Yeah.
well over 40%. And I'm not sure how onerous it would be to make those particular faces of the building bird safe.
There's cost effective and obviously more expensive measures in the list. So yeah, there's various options depending on the budget of the owner.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, the cost sensitivity might suggest is less of an issue, given that somebody who's building a house that has 40% of a facade glass probably has the means. Is that not
Same as much because they could have acquired it decades ago.
fair?
Not only that, but I just wonder how many birds are flying into like the backside of a house backing up on a mountain. It's just like I feel that you'd want to put bird treatment on a facade with like say 60% glass facing a view, as that's where the birds are migrating from, not from the backside of a mountain.
Yeah.
Like so it's like it seems to me that it reduces the effectiveness of the standard by looking at the building as a whole versus any one side.
I agree with that. And, seeing homes on the coast, Moss Beach, other areas that have very large coastal, ocean views with, I think from what I've seen, well over 40% on a single facade. They really need to have bird strike treatment on there.
Irrespective of height, I assume is your comment. So even if they're under 30 feet in height, that you think that in those instances they should have bird safe glass?
I believe so, yeah. Because those are especially vulnerable areas for, that's where the birds are migrating, birds are out all the time.
The other thing I'd say about the percentages is, of course, energy efficiency standards come to play. As one of our speakers mentioned, glass is not as effective in terms of thermal insulation. And so I do think it would be unlikely for a house to have an entire building that has 40% of glass. I think that it's much more likely that, as we've talked about so far, is the view side will be the side with more glass. The remainder of the structure will not be able to accommodate as much glass due to energy efficiency requirements. And I think from a staff perspective, if the commission would desire to require bird-friendly glass treatment on single-family residences where the facade has 40% more of glass, that we wouldn't have any strong objection to that.
Just a question for myself. How do we calculate when we say 40% glass? Is it on all sides?
No, I'm suggesting that it would be per side. So
Per side?
Yes. So on the side that you have 40% more of glass, on that side you need to have bird safe treatment.
I see.
Can I offer in advance of the motion for this is going to be complicated because there are a few different points. We break this down into just a few elements of confirmed consensus before we go. So a few of these points regards to the lighting, closing the exception for minor renovations that still require that still include lighting changes in the scope of our work, those should also be conformant to the new standard. That was one. Can we like I don't know if we should do a vote or just
get like a
get
general gut check from the
commission. Is that something that everyone's on board with?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
You were facing that way.
Sorry. In the case of a minor renovation that still requires a permit, that includes lighting changes within the scope of work, that those
Okay,
lights should
that
also.
discussion.
Yes. So
Right.
we're all on board with
That
that.
is one.
Okay.
Right.
The next one, there was the, yeah.
I think Camille was looking at me because a minor remodel like that might not trigger a planning permit. It might only trigger a building permit, right? And so I think the concern, because, you know, compliance with these lighting requirements is typically done by the planning team as opposed to the building team that's just evaluating building code requirements. However, what I would say to that is that all building permits are routed to planners for review to ensure it complies with height limits, setback requirements, and so forth. So a planner will have their eyes on it, and I think it's reasonable to, if that minor remodel does include installation or changes of light fixtures, that the planner would confirm that it is compliant with the new standard. So I'm comfortable with that direction, should it be the way the commission wants to go.
Okay. The next one, the UV treated glass. There was feedback that
that's not effective.
UV glass is not effective. Is that something everyone is on board with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so then now we're discussing this.
Right. So the question is about the building facades that consist of more than 40% glass. Should we remove the distinction between single family and multifamily homes? And then also should we remove the 30 feet above grade and just go to a building facade of more than 40% glass? And the question is like, is that how does that affect? I mean, it's what I'm seeing, and from my understanding is this is going to mostly affect single family homes with great views that want to have a big wall with windows. And like is this going to the bird safe treatment for those types of projects too onerous, or is that reasonable?
Just to add to that, I think
Yeah.
the way that the Housing Leadership Council staff phrased it was that only the windows in excess of the 40% would be treated, not the ones under. It's not like 90% of everything.
Okay, that's not clearly stated in their proposed, so that in the proposed language for the, so we would, if that is the case for the county, would probably need to state that. I don't know. Because this isn't something that like the advocates are proposing, and so maybe I'm going overboard in this for single family homes, and we just keep it based on the proposed language that HLC sent.
I'd be comfortable if we could find a way of phrasing it legibly. I mean, if the language gets too complicated, then I think that would.
Yeah. What does the rest of the commission?
Well, one thing that strikes me, because I don't know, but these treatments, how do they affect the view?
I think they probably vary based on.
So, I mean, if you're going to buy a view house and you have, you talk about honors. Number one, you said there are a lot of treatments that are not expensive. So I don't
would think the film is probably the worst.
Pardon me?
I would probably think that the film is probably, like an additive post.
So, I mean, but I think expense is not quite as important as if I had a view house and all of a sudden I have to put bird treatment on it and I can't see the view. I'm not aware. I don't know enough about the treatment to know.
Yeah, my understanding is that the methods of treatment wouldn't substantially impede your ability to appreciate the view.
Okay.
They're subtle treatments that the birds recognize, but
Right.
don't have a substantial change in the quality of the transparency.
Okay. So if that's the case, and then the expense factor is not too onerous, then I don't see an objection.
So 30 feet is single story, two-story, two-story, three-story,
2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we are giving a lot of leeway in 2 or 3-story.
The height limit's 28 for most design review districts, but there is a way to exceed
For
it if you have like
homes. So this is practically a complete height
exception.
of a home.
Yeah. Yeah, 30 feet was it seemed as if it was a common standard adopted by many municipalities relative to the application of the bird treatment requirement for single family.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if this is uncommon, I worry that we're producing something.
Yeah, I mean the flip side of that is this our jurisdiction is typically outside of major municipal areas.
Right.
The major municipal areas probably have more like privacy issues that would limit the size of the facade.
Mm-hmm.
We have more elevation and topography in our jurisdiction, so that leads to more
yeah, and a lot more contact with
wildlife.
Yeah, wild areas.
What if we go with a percentage rather than a height?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I do think the 40% glass that was proposed by HLC.
No, even for single family
Yeah,
homes.
that's what I'm saying is like instead of having 30 feet, just have portions of new single family and multifamily housing where the building facade consists of more than 40% glass.
Yeah.
Again, my only worry is that like I don't know enough about the costs of or the trade-offs of doing the bird friendly treatments to know if proposing this for single family homes is just outrageous.
Yeah, so we covered that.
Do we have any way of?
I mean, there's just a cost. There's like various cost treatments. So
there are letters in our staff report which says it adds what 0.125% of the total cost.
Okay. I think that was from the bird advocate. So if you guys want to call her back and see if
right.
can answer these questions.
No, we have her a paper or a publication there, so we won't hear anything different.
Perhaps one more thing I think that was brought up we haven't discussed regarding the lighting was the concern that at the moment the standard only applies to the coast side, whether we wanted to extend that to the bayside areas.
Sorry, I missed
one of the speakers brought up the lighting
or do it
standard
for
only,
the bayside too.
Yeah. That can be a topic on which you give staff some further direction, but I do not recommend that you deliberate it more fully without having agendized it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just to try and close the loop on the discussion of the bird safe glass for 40 facades with 40% more of glass. I think the point that was made by the Housing Leadership Council is if we're going to require that for multifamily housing, why wouldn't we also require that for single family residential?
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's a fair point. I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Nugent. I do think we, in our wilder areas, highly vegetated areas, we do get bird activity under 30 feet in height. And so should that be the desire of the commission, I don't think there's a major objection from staff, although I will say that there certainly has been concern about the impact of the cost of such treatments on housing in general, right? So even though, you know, it might not be consequential for a majority of homeowners, it may be consequential for a few. And that cumulative impact of that price, it can have an impact on the cost of housing. So I think that is my only word of caution about it, is how it will affect housing costs overall. And unfortunately, I don't have a good explanation of what that increased cost looks like because of the various methods that have been identified for bird safe glass. I understand screens to be an effective treatment, but on a facade that's got 40% glass to appreciate a view, I highly doubt that each one of those glass panels are going to have screens on them, right?
Right.
Which means that, so you're likely going to a more expensive method of treatment, probably the purchasing the glass that is constructed to be bird friendly with the materials inside embedded within the glass is probably that and or the film are the more expensive treatment options. And so it will have some degree of an economic impact.
I think one thing missing from our conversation is that bird populations are decreasing at an alarming rate, and we as humans might have a responsibility to want to limit that. And I don't think some of these restrictions that we're talking about or possible expense, you know, in the big scale of life is really, you know, that important, because if someone wants to do 35% of their view or something, there's easy ways, you know, around it. And you know, we have these bird strike, you know, there's a reason for it, and there's a lot of things happening with our wildlife, you know, lifelines that we could improve quite a bit. And I think this is just one of them. And I don't see it honestly as a huge factor that could be easily worked around.
Okay, so procedurally, here's my thought, and I just want to run this by the planning department. So say we do vote on removing the 30 feet above grade restriction and just say portions of single family and multifamily housing where the building facade consists of more than 40% glass. And we go to that language. At the Board of Supervisors, if advocates and experts come back and say, hey, no, that's not a good plan, would the Board of Supervisors be able to reinsert the 30 feet above grade language?
I'll answer and let Tim correct me if necessary. I think any substantive change made by the Board of Supervisors needs to take one of two paths. The first would be to send it back to the Planning Commission to reconsider. The second would be for the board to have both a first and second reading of the change.
I definitely agree with the first part. I would have to look into whether or not we could go a first, second reading path without actually coming back to the Planning Commission on an item that had previously gone to the commission. But it would not be possible just to make a text amendment before the board on the fly in response to public comment without going through a further process.
Okay, thank you.
Would it, and maybe another procedural option would be, well, we can obviously hear this again, but I before we do that, we should make sure that we have what we need to make a final decision. You know, if we're going to pursue that route, would it be possible to provide two options to the board of supervisors and let them choose?
I asked the same question,
Oh.
Council, as you were formulating it. And I think, you know, it's the responsibility of the Planning Commission to provide a recommendation. And, you know, providing options is not necessarily in line with that obligation. So one of our staff members was able to provide me with a little more detail regarding the cost consideration. And it seems to me that one of the options, one of the options would be to cover the whole window. You know, you could have a couple dots on the window to make it bird safe, and such a treatment would be $5 or less per square feet. So
I mean, it seems like the two impacts there would be either the financial cost and then the limitation of the view, like what it would do to the view.
Correct.
I think we kind of want to know both of those things.
Right. So it seems to me like $5 or less per square foot is
that approach solves the cost.
The cost. In terms of the quality of the view.
I mean, if the view has a bunch of polka dots on it, that seems a little
right. I think those polka dots could be fairly subtle and distributed in a manner that it would not substantially detract from the view.
Okay.
That's just my sense of it, not being an expert.
Yeah, I mean, I do think aesthetically people are going to want to have an unbroken view as though there's no glass there. Like, so
those are olden times. You never know. You never know. People may like that new look. South San Francisco Library, it has those dots all over because it has glass all around it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's a reminder that you're doing your part for the birds. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do people think? What do the other commissioners think?
I think that one reminder is that this applies only to the percentage over the 40%.
We have the power to
write that.
So it's not, the way I read it, it's not specified. It's not specifically stated in that, but that was what was assumed, I think, that we would.
Yeah, and I just have to question, like, if, let's say, the 40% is just a bank of glass, right? And so let's say it's 35% all straight windows. That's the most likely spot for a bird to strike, right? And to say, oh, well, you don't need to treat that, but you've got a couple other smaller windows here that get you over 40, those need to be treated. I just question whether or not that would effectively achieve the objective that we're talking about here.
That's how some are interpreting it, though. So I guess we need
No,
to
I know. I think there's a variety of interpretations and opinions on the matter. So,
so does the staff determine that?
Well, I would like the ordinance to be clear, so staff is not in a position to have to try and guess what we meant here.
Right.
So I mean, I think what I'm hearing is that as it stands now, the ordinance requires multifamily developments that have 40% or more of their facade to use bird-friendly glass. And I think there sounds to be a desire from the commission to apply that to single family residences as well, even if they are below 30 feet in height, which is the majority of the homes that we see on the coast.
Yep.
And so if that's the way the majority of the commissioners feel, then I think the modification to the ordinance would be to eliminate the provision that only requires bird safe glass to be used on portions of single family homes above 30 feet in height, and make the requirement that bird safe glass be used on facades with 40% or more of glass apply to both multifamily and single family residential development.
To your point before about only in excess of the quantity in excess of 40% does seem also to defeat the point of this exercise.
See 30 feet.
Well, I hate to further complicate it, but I mean, the other factor is, right, you have a 40% scenario where you have lots of small windows that are probably less likely to result in bird strikes.
Right.
Then you have the example where you have large continuous windows, which I think are the ones.
That's what we're trying to.
So perhaps,
is there could we craft a standard that relates to the size of a single window pane?
I think even large glass facades are comprised of multiple panes.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of the way the panes are constructed. But I think what you're getting at is continuous glass.
Continuous glass, yeah.
Right. And so perhaps the way to write it, at least for the single family residence, is that bird safe glass needs to be used on windows, continuous windows that exceed 40% of the total size of that facade. That then you can break it down into having 20%. They're not continuous, but they're still.
But actually, I think that does serve the point, because it's the continuous window that makes it easy for the birds to mistake as not glass. So if you break it up a lot, then
you've minimized the potential impact.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so I think you're going in a direction of only treating a portion of the 40 instead of 90% if it goes over.
No.
If it's just continuous.
Yeah, I mean,
but not 90% of all windows on a side that exceeds 40. I mean, like, if the side exceeds 40, you're treating all of them.
No, just the continuous portion.
The continuous portion, but then it requires further work in terms of defining continuous. What's the minimum square footage of a large continuous window?
Continuous means glass abutting glass.
But for how long of a stretch?
40%. So you take the square footage of the total facade. If that stretch of glass equals 40% more of the total size of the facade.
But if they're all broken up and it total exceeds 40, then they wouldn't be subject to it.
It wouldn't, because by breaking it up, they're less subject to bird strike.
And there's also glass railings in there too. So,
I mean, glass railings, I think are
100% treated. So so that wouldn't be included. Okay. Interesting.
Is it?
So just from a extra work perspective, the architect's going to need to calculate or know the square footage of each window. And so it may be easier to just go by like a threshold of square footage for windows when the portions of the multifamily housing are more than 40% glass, like glazing that's more than, just to put it out there, 100 square feet, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I don't think I could support a particular
it's
square
too,
footage right now without something
mm-hmm.
to hang it on.
Yeah, because it would feel arbitrary.
It does, yeah.
Another option that's available to the commission is, we could go with the language recommended by staff for now and come back at a subsequent time after we've further evaluated this. Essentially move the package forward as has been recommended by staff, and then revisit this issue at a later date.
Well, it would have to be signed off by the Board of Supervisors regardless.
Yes.
So is that onerous on them or on the standard to change it now and then again later? Or would you rather change it once later or twice, now and then later?
I think once later is what I
Yeah.
was suggesting.
So should we come hear this again? What would we need if we're going to do that?
What I was hoping to avoid was delaying action on the whole package.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the previous time on January 28th, you took action on the ordinance, but giving staff a particular direction, which was, then we added the bird safety standard and that went to the board because it was in response to planning commission direction.
Mm-hmm.
So could take that path.
I would prefer to just go with something more final today, so we get this approved and passed, and then if we put it out in the ether, the advocates are listening. If it's found that, hey, we should include single family homes regardless of height that hit that 40% threshold, we can make an amendment, like without, I mean, it wouldn't be particularly onerous on staff to make this small amendment.
No.
Okay.
So what I would say, just to be on the safe side, we put it out there. I'm curious whether we should include single family homes, but I don't consider myself an expert on this subject matter. It just seems reasonable to me that anything over 40%, regardless of height, should have the bird safe treatments. But again, I'm no expert. And so perhaps we just go with the language that was provided by HLC and then see what the community responds with. So
go with the language, meaning
just keep the 30 feet height
in the
threshold.
correspondence.
Yeah.
Right.
And then like for single family homes, do the 40% or greater for multifamily.
Okay.
I mean, unless you have a better, unless you have an idea, because I'm not.
I also don't feel qualified to make a final determination there, and I think if we're going to hear this again, I just want to make sure that we have the information we would need to do this, so that we're not spinning our wheels the next time we hear it.
Yeah.
So my question is, what would we want to have before us in order to feel comfortable making a determination? What missing information do we need? So if we hear just this part again, and just the bird glass treatment amendment again, and we'll pass the rest of it, what else do we want to know?
So this discussion is really about future residents or people in the future building a new home, like single family home. Like that constituency doesn't really exist. So it's about, so like
it would also hit renovations of,
yeah,
where 50% of the windows are being changed. And yeah, as Mr. Monowitz has mentioned, homes do get renovated, and windows do need to be replaced. So this would hit effectively everything over a long enough period of time.
Yeah.
with regard to the
And-
information that I think would be helpful in terms of bringing this discussion to a conclusion, I think there's kind of two important sides to the discussion. The first is how important is it in terms of protecting birds, right? And then the other side of it is what's the impact on the cost of housing? So I would imagine that if we were going to revisit this matter, we would really want to take a deep dive into both questions. If for glass that's under 30 feet above grade, how important is that to protection of bird species? It seems to me today we've heard support for what we've proposed from most of the bird advocates, which implies to me that as long as we're treating glass above 30 feet above grade, then we're addressing the populations of most concern. I think, you know, the question about, well, what about the single family residences under 30 feet of height was raised by HLC, both in terms of effectiveness and fairness, because if you have a multifamily residence, we're not stating that the requirement for bird safety would be 40% of the facade is windows, irrespective of height, correct? We don't have that 30-foot limit in the multifamily. I mean, if we were interested in addressing the issue of fairness between multifamily and single family, another option would be to combine the 40% of the facade. If that's the instance, then all windows above 30 feet in height would need to be treated. Not all the windows on a multifamily residence, only those above the 30 feet above grade. That would be an alternative way of making the standards for single family residences and multifamily residences essentially be equivalent. But then again, you know, I think what we've put forward today has received support from the majority of speakers. If the commission was comfortable moving forward with what we've proposed, we'd be happy should we get feedback that really emphasizes the importance of revisiting this, return with a minor amendment to make adjustments that are responsive to that feedback that we get.
Okay. So
Yeah.
So
Also, the thing to keep in mind is there will be new kind of windows coming out in the future if we are looking at long term, and hopefully the costs will go down. Hopefully, okay. So that those things will help us further refine our regulations.
So if that's the direction that the commission would like to take, then I think I just would recap the changes that we've with respect to the exception to light standard compliance for minor remodels and additions of single family residences. We're going to adjust that exception to make clear that such projects, if they involve new or replacement fixtures, that those new or replacement fixtures comply with the current light standards. The second revision is we will remove UV coated glass as an effective means of bird safety treatment. But as for the other standards that identify the threshold of when bird safety glass is required, those will remain the same as presented by staff today.
No, what I recommend is that we use the language that that was provided by us from HLC, which was worked out between BirdSafe and HLC advocates.
Understood. I apologize. So the staff recommendation regarding the use of bird safe glass will be revised to match the threshold recommended by Housing Leadership Council.
Yes.
Maybe you want to clarify that it's not applied, the 40% isn't calculated as a whole of the building, but on each facade perhaps.
Right. So it says portions of multifamily housing where the building facade consists of more than 40% glass.
So yeah, I would interpret that as being specific to each facade.
Each plane. Yeah.
Correct. Okay, I think the record is clear in that regard. And
Okay. I would like to make a motion based on what Director Monowitz had listed.
I second.
You haven't heard the motion yet.
Yeah, okay.
We would read the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Do we have the recommendation that we could put up?
I think Angela's working on that right at the moment.
All right, where is it?
Okay. I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt an ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 8.256 of the County Ordinance Code regarding design review standards with modifications recommended by staff, and adopt related text amendments to the county zoning regulations for various zoning districts for consistency with the new ordinance, including the amendments provided by Director Monowitz. Do I have a second? Sorry.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrows,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Serrano Kwan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nugent,
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay. And I think we're done with everything but the last few items, Mr. Marowitz.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 3 is correspondence directed to the Planning Commission. Other than the correspondence we received regarding the hearing item today, there is no correspondence to report. So moving on to item 4, our next meeting will be on May 27th. We do not anticipate a study session, but we do have 2 items currently on that agenda. The first is for a coastal development permit for some new fencing that was installed on a vacant parcel in the Seal Cove area of Moss Beach. In most cases, when you're installing fences in conjunction with a single family residence, that's part of the residential development covered by the permit or allowed as an improvement to an existing structure. However, when we have a vacant parcel, fencing off a vacant parcel will trigger the need for a coastal development permit. So we have such a project on the next meeting. We also have a proposed amendment to our local coastal program to address the mid-coast building quota. The commission might recall that due to the approval of the Cypress Point project, we are limited in our ability to approve permits for projects that include the construction of a new residential unit. Our proposed method for addressing that is to make adjustments to the text of that policy, which will keep the 40 unit per year limit, but allow us to exceed it for affordable housing projects based on averaging out the number of units approved per year since the 40 unit limit was put in place. And taking that approach, because we have close to 200 units that could have been approved but were not under the existing quota, it changes the averaging method so that now we would have the ability to issue up to 40 building permits this year. And moving on, depending on how that averaging works out. So we'll get into all the details about that at the next hearing. Just wanted to give you a little bit of the flavor of what we'll be proposing. And moving on to item 5, the director's report. As promised, I'll just give you a quick update on our AI initiative. We've got a pilot project to evaluate whether or not AI can be used to review plans for building permits and effectively assess those plans' compliance with relevant building code standards. The project is phased in that we didn't want to make a big investment in it until it was demonstrated that AI could effectively do the job. And so we had a proof of concept phase under which the contractor had to demonstrate their ability to use only a few selected chapters of the building code, not the entire building code, but certain chapters that we use frequently to demonstrate the concept. We have reached that point. The contractor has effectively demonstrated the proof of concept, and so we'll be moving forward with the complete build out of that AI plan review system. So more to come on that as we build it out and start actually using it in our day-to-day work of plan review. We'll be tracking the amount of time that we save in that regard, and also making sure that it is effectively doing the job. So good progress, but more to go on that.
To clarify, how was the specific contractor selected?
And we did first a request for qualifications, and that was followed by a request for proposals. And so it was a competitive process under which we selected a contractor based on their ability to perform the work as well as price considerations. Mm-hmm. Well, so the way it's worked is we've provided the contractor with examples of building plans that we've had to evaluate. They've run it through their system, which produces a report that goes line by line in terms of code requirement. It identifies whether or not the necessary information was contained in the plan. If the answer is yes, then it identifies whether or not the information contained in the plan complies with that particular code requirement. We then evaluate those reports to make sure that they are accurate and complete in terms of performing that code compliance review that would traditionally occur manually. So that, in essence, is how
quite a bit of time.
Yes, it has a potential. I mean, we've had to go through a number of rounds of review where the initial product was not actually saving us time, which is why it's taken us a number of months to get to the point where we're ready to say that we think the proof of concept has been effectively established. So a lot of progress has been made over the last few weeks in getting to the point where we feel confident that this will be a good tool that will save us quite a bit of time.
Is this vendor working with other jurisdictions or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Then just briefly with regard to the housing element, on April 21st, the Board of Supervisors approved the modifications to the housing element and the rezoning program that we brought to this commission, I think the month prior. And that has been submitted to State Housing and Community Development, and we are waiting and hoping to receive confirmation that gets us to the point of substantial compliance that we expect it to. So hope to be hearing back from them this week, and we'll be glad to update you at the next Planning Commission meeting. And then finally, there's going to be a Board of Supervisors meeting on June 9th. There's 2 items currently on that agenda. One is going to be a change in the seat designation for members of our Agricultural Advisory Committee. So there's that committee has members that are appointed based on their role as farmers or ranchers or agricultural business people. Currently, only a farmer can serve as the chair of the commission. And so there's going to be a swap between 2 of the commission members. One who is currently appointed as a business member, but is also a farmer, is going to be put in the farmer seat. A farmer that's also the business member is going to be put in the business member seat. And that will enable a change in chair that the committee desires. The second item that will be at the board is what we discussed today, the update to the design review ordinance. And so I think that completes my report for today. Happy to answer any questions the commissioners might have.
So on the housing element part, does that effectively eliminate builder's remedy proposals afterwards? And does it affect, builder's remedy proposals that have already been proposed?
Builder's remedy pre-applications that have been submitted will not be affected. Those applications are protected. If they get in the door before we're certified, then we have to proceed with processing them. But new builder's remedy applications will no longer be accepted once we get confirmation from the state that we're in substantial compliance.
Any other or commissioner updates? No?
Nope.
All right. Well, then we can adjourn. Thanks everybody.